Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is building up a force of some 100,000 troops near the eastern Ukrainian stronghold of Pokrovsk, which Russia claims as its territory. Zelensky tells journalists that there is a build-up and concentration of an army of up to 100,000. He believes they are preparing offensive actions.
The situation on the front line, the situation we have is more or less normal. The situation is under control. The Pokrovsk direction is the most serious today. There is a build-up and concentration of the enemy there. Up to 100,000, that's what we have as of this morning. They are preparing offensive actions in any case. It is important that we know this and are in control.
Well, and to discuss this in detail, we have international affairs analyst Dr. Marek Laskiewicz joining us from London. Marek, glad to have you join us. Well, Witkoff meets in New York today with Andriy Yermak, head of Zelensky's presidential office, part of an effort to get Russia and Ukraine meeting for technical talks ahead of course, eventual trilateral summit. What are your expectations?
I'm afraid they're rather low. One of the talks that has been mooted is that President Zelensky and President Putin should meet face-to-face without President Donald Trump. As far as I can tell, this is a total non-starter. What is possible is with Donald Trump pushes it, is that President Putin and President Zelensky will meet in his presence. And that is about the only thing that they could set up. However, it remains to be seen what will be on the agenda, because President Putin and President Zelensky have diametrically opposite goals. And so it's hard to see what kind of negotiation can take place.
He's been accused, Putin, by UK, European leaders, of sabotaging peace after devastating airstrike on Kyiv that killed 23 people and, of course, affected British Council building and then 4 children.
Yes, well, there was indeed a very heavy strike by Russia. From its point of view, it has never agreed to a ceasefire and has no intention of having a ceasefire until there is a comprehensive peace agreement, peace treaty, including, it must be pointed out, one which it sees as at the very least acceptable and at best highly favorable. Therefore, these strikes will continue, and there will be, therefore, more such. Where there is a problem is that it hit the delegation, European delegation, or rather was close to it, and likewise the British Council. Outside of that, it was a perfectly normal, by this time, strike, which the Russians doing nightly, except this was a very large one. The reason, incidentally, it was a very large one is to show the Ukrainians and the world, and the USA, and above all Europe, that Russia is not out. Its economy is not finished. President Putin isn't finished. The attacks are carrying on. And Russia, by launching this huge attack, in effect gives the lie to any idea that it's running out of money, munitions, or men.
Well, some Ukrainian, US, Ukrainian, and European officials say one of the major problems is that Witkoff has an attitude of go it alone.
Yeah, I think that's quite true. But it's not just Witkoff, it's President Donald Trump. The fact of the matter is the USA has a quite clear policy now, which it does not regard the Europeans as especially important, and it seeks to, I think, as far as one can tell, certainly bring about some concessions from the Ukrainian side. And I presume that this meeting will be an attempt by the Americans to extract some sort of concessions. They succeed in getting very minor concessions out of President Putin, and they, I imagine, are hoping to do exactly the same or better from the Ukrainians.
Yeah, but the issue with this, from some who are quite familiar with these discussions, is that this leaves him, Witkoff, sometimes unprepared, sometimes uninformed about what to say, that he's handling it like what do you call it? Well, he's not particularly a diplomat. that he's handling it the way he will handle business. I'm trying to get that word now. So, I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, unquestionably, he may well be unprepared or worse prepared than people may like. The fact of the matter is that these sort of accusations are irrelevant and don't really help much on the basis that America is a very big country. It has chosen via President Trump, in effect, this is a person to deal with the negotiations, and any criticism of him, like in this manner, simply, if you like, debases the possibility of the negotiations will succeed, whether he really is well informed or not. This is, if you like, part of the political propaganda going one way or the other. I've no doubt if I went to President Donald Trump, I'd hear the exact opposite. It's politics.
Then what do you make of the fact that Witkoff has met Putin 5 good times, 5, over 6 months? That's the period. But nothing particularly to translate to show that, access to the Russian leader into any breakthroughs on this war or ceasefire or peace with Ukraine.
Well, it's quite what they have got out of President Putin is a quite clear set of demands. Although, truth be told, they were more or less known beforehand, but at least they're on paper, so to speak. They've got some minor concessions out of Putin, and that's it. Unless America chooses to force Russia, then Russia will carry on. Moreover, Russia uses these talks, if you like, to simply stall any peace process until they can recover, in their eyes, from the USSR point of view, or, if you like, in the modern point of view, conquer more of Ukraine. And that is exactly what Russia's trying to do, hence the assault on Pokrovsk, which President Zelensky was warning about and is probably correct.
And that's why I'm going to ask you this next question. How do you read Putin's actions in spite of the red carpet treatment that Trump accorded him for the meeting at Alaska? It looks like he's calling Trump's bluff.
It'd be more accurate to state that he is utilizing what he knows about Trump to carry on his invasion, and therefore, in that sense, the negotiations are nothing more than a stalling tactic so he can carry on invading before any peace treaty is signed. But secondly, President Putin has said right from the word go, in effect, what he wants, and certainly has repeated it recently to Witkoff. He wants such a peace treaty. He has no intention of doing a ceasefire. He's stated all that. And therefore, they shouldn't be surprised. The question is, will President Donald Trump attempt to force President Putin to go for a ceasefire by implementing further sanctions or supplying Ukraine with more weapons or giving permission for Ukraine to use American weapons ever more deeply, or not? Unless President Donald Trump is prepared to do that, then the situation will carry on as it is. But it's not a question of calling President Trump's bluff. It's simply that President Putin, unless he is forced, will carry on this path.
2 things here. Do you sincerely think or believe that sanctions will get Putin to capitulate? That's one. And then the second is, are there other ways that Putin can be reined in?
First and foremost, he can't be reined in entirely because Russia is a nuclear power. It's a very big nuclear power, so there's no way of forcing him to do anything in that sense. The question is whether I bring about sanctions, he'll make the war so unprofitable as that he will desist. And here, I have to point out that, as I've said from the first day of the war, sanctions per se won't do it. One of the reasons is the Russian economy is very big in the sense it's a huge country with many resources. It's got enough food. It now, via its allies, has enough munitions, and they can carry on basis of a war economy. And therefore, in my opinion, the sanctions per se will not bring down Russia, actually, if they are forced in the sense of threatening India and other nations, they may well backfire, because President Donald Trump's prestige is not very high. And as a result of enforcing negative sanctions, it is unlikely to bring Russia to heel, to sort of speak, to state what you'd like to see, judging by your question. On the other hand, it may cost America something as well, because it's quite clear that India is not prepared to toe USA's line entirely. And India is the key one, because the secondary sanctions are above all directed against India. And so here, the answer to your question is no, there is no easy way of reining in President Putin at all.
That is dangerous, I think. What do you think?
Yes, I'll go further. In my opinion, as I've stated in my books, this war is the start of what will eventually escalate to World War III for precisely the reasons we've just discussed a second ago. President Putin, it cannot be stopped easily, and he has a quite clear agenda, which is basically revanchist. He wants to see basically Russia again with this sort of international influence of the USSR, or slightly more differently, but not far off, for the world to be a multipolar world in which Russia is seen as an equal, along with China, to America, and therefore that Russia's sphere of influence is acknowledged. Now, this would imply that even if the Ukraine war stopped, there will be another war, because he has, of course, the Suwalki corridor in mind as linking up with what is now the Kaliningrad exclave. And this also would, in my opinion, further escalate the war. So there is no easy way. As you say, the situation is dangerous. It is likely to become more dangerous. And there's no easy way of seeing the war being stopped as we stand at present. Rather the opposite. If the invasion of Pokrovsk succeeds, then Russia will have notched up a very significant success.
I'll let you go. What do you make of this statement coming from the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, that Russia is building up a force of some 100,000 troops near the eastern Ukrainian stronghold of Pokrovsk?
Yes, I think the Russians are taking the opportunity to seize as much territory as possible. They've had their eye on Pokrovsk for months, but have not succeeded, and so have decided to simply bludgeon their way through. And if they succeed in taking it, it will be a significant success. It will not be fatal for Ukraine, but on the other hand, it will be a significant blow and will add to the strength of President Putin's negotiation with the Americans and with the Ukrainians. And that, I believe that President Zelensky is correct in his analysis that Russia is about to try for a hammer blow to try and close the Pokrovsk issue, which has been there for months on end.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz.